Hi, everybody. Geez, I'm screwing up already. Okay, here I am. I want to talk a little bit about the main points from The World Much Snow, the Holocaust that you're reading this week. Um, what I am going to say is an overview that hopefully will help you digest all the information in Part 2. Oh, Part 2 is so overwhelming. And to me, it's the part that hurts so badly when I read it. So let's go over the main points quickly. What the chapter is doing is talking about the process of how they were going to exterminate the Jews, and they repeated that in each and every country. What they did in Germany, they did in Austria, they did in Czechoslovakia, they did in France, they did in Belgium, Netherlands, Denmark. Well, they had trouble in Denmark. Every single country they took over, they did this process that they practiced in Germany. Now, in Germany, it took them from 1933 to pretty much 1939 to get this started. In other countries, since they had the process in place, it took a lot less time, okay? So, first of all, there were boycotts of stores, they expelled people from public institutions, they took businesses, all those things that the Jews couldn't earn a living. They couldn't work in public institutions, all those things. Many couldn't earn a living. Many who owned their shops found themselves working in their shops if they were lucky. For the most part, no. As they were doing this, boycotting and expelling people, they had people wearing a yellow star. Now, that's what it would have looked like in Germany. In other places, it would have their own word for Jew. It would always be yellow, though, and but it would have a different design. Then they would register the Jews. They'd have them line up and get, where they're living, their names. Not too many had telephones at that time, but they probably took that information too. But mainly they wanted to know where they were. They wanted to know where they were so they could round them up, get them out on the street, and push them basically into a ghetto area. A place of the city they'd wall off, put barbed wire around, and say, here, you guys can live in this part of the city. They couldn't get out. It was locked, and they had to recreate their own institutions in there. Many of the ghettos started their own schools, their own synagogues, their own way to take care of the medical, that kind of thing. And each ghetto had a Judenrat, which was a council of Jewish elders who basically were carrying out Hitler's orders, or, the Nazis' orders. They didn't have much leverage in what they did to help their people because they couldn't get supplies. People got ration coupons to get things, but usually by the time they got there, the food was gone. They wanted to force starvation in the ghettos and try to thin those out before they took people into the cattle cars and exterminate them. They took them right to, back up. They took them to different camps and they either killed them immediately or worked them to death. You'll find that any survivor's memoir you read is usually someone who was put in the camp in 1944, maybe late 1943, because your life expectancy in a camp was less than a year. Now we're talking about, oh gosh, I'm sorry. How many Jews are we talking about? Well, in Germany, according to the United States Holocaust Museum, only less than 1% of Jews were made up the German population. So it was relatively easy to control them, and ghettos did not did not happen in Germany. They were pretty easy to round up, take care of, and haul them out. But the problem was in Eastern Europe, there were about 3 million Jews just in Poland. There were a number of Jews, about another million here between the Soviet Union and Romania. There were Jews from the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and so there was quite a few more Jews, and they just couldn't wipe them out as easily, so that's why they had to go into the ghettos and then ultimately into the gas chambers. The ghettos were all in Poland and in Eastern Europe. They were not in Germany. Neither were any of the killing camps. The killing camps were different than concentration camps. Dachau, for instance, or Buchenwald, where Wiesel ultimately ended up, were work camps, and they slowly worked people to death. They were not extermination camps, but places like Sobibor and Treblinka, you got off the train and you went right to the gas chamber. Western Europe did not have as many Jews, but they still followed the same thing. As I said, the ghettos were a gathering place for the Jews that they were put in there. They were walled in. They had to stay there. They couldn't get out. If they were caught smuggling things in and out, they were shot. If they walked down the street and the Nazi didn't like how you looked, they shot you. And the point that you couldn't get food in there is you were starved, because they were hoping a lot of you would starve. They had total control over the Jews. Now you might be thinking, I want to stop here and say this, well, why is you just talking about the Jews and the Jews and the Jews? There were the Nazis, there were the Gypsies, there were Jehovah Witnesses, homosexuals. Yes, those two were placed usually in concentration camps, not death camps. But it depended on the country whether they went after them. Because the main order and the main objective of the Nazi regime was to get rid of the Jews. If you want to know a little bit about what a ghetto looks like, watch the film The Pianist. I don't teach The Pianist because I can barely get through it without crying. In fact, the first time I watched it, I turned it off halfway through. I couldn't deal with it. Years later, I went back and rewatched it and made it through after many stops and starts. But I got a picture in my mind from there what a ghetto looks like. Finally, the final solution is something you're going to read about in the text. And the final solution is a highly secret meeting. Hitler did not attend it. He did not want any culpability in this. His highest officials met, and their final plan was to kill the Jews. The whole purpose was what to do with the Jewish problem, and they decided, we just kill them. Letting them leave wasn't working. Starving them to death wasn't fast enough. Let's just take them to the concentration camps and kill them. And remember, from the first part of the world must know, they were working on a way to kill them. They were starting with different gases and different methods with the handicapped and those that they felt were undesirable among their own German population. If you're interested in the death camps, there's a good film. It's older, but it's a good film called Escape from Sobibor. At one time it was on Netflix. I don't think it's still there. But it's a good film if you want to know what an extermination camp is like. And also it's a good film to see Jewish resistance. The Jews resisted in Sobibor, and the camp was closed. About 300 resisted, maybe 100 of them got out alive in their escape. But it caused the Nazis to shut down that camp and their other extermination camps. Auschwitz killed the most Jews, and that's why you hear about it the most. But remember, there were other camps. There were only a couple other camps that had the crematories, but it killed the most. And there were other sections of Auschwitz. It was huge, where there were work camps where they worked to death. Were worked to death. There was also the part where Mengele did his terrible experiments. On Netflix right now, it's there, the BBC Auschwitz, and it's 6 hours, but it's very interesting if you watch it, an hour a night or something, and it'll explain a lot about Auschwitz, and it'll explain Auschwitz within the context of the Holocaust. I hope this gives you a good overview of what to look for in your reading this week. Your writing is going to be about something that bothers you the most. I think we need to deal with our feelings right now and talk about why all this stuff is so upsetting to us. Thank you for listening.